Good morning. The kids are finally back in school, so it's time to work, but gotta get the studio ready first. So let's do it. All right, we are finally set up and ready to start working. We're working on this today. It's work in progress, still pretty rough, but I'm liking where it's at. Now, it's already ready to go. I oiled it out. I did that the other day. If you want to see my oiling out process and want to see me oil this out, you can see that video on Patreon. So we're ready to go for this surface. Let me show you my palette setup and my iPad real quick. All right, so here's my setup. I've got my palette and my reference photo. I have this set up on my iPad and I'm almost always viewing it in this black and white posterized view, just so I can see all of my value groups nice and easy. All right, the first thing that I'm gonna do is tackle my lights. I'm gonna be using Cremant's White as the base and adjust with some more vibrant saturated colors, Cad Orange. I've got some Naples Yellow, Schwenningen Yellow, maybe even some Craplax Rose. Okay, so lots of reds and oranges mixed into this really light color. So I'm gonna start in my light areas. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my lightest lights anywhere on my reference where my lightest value group is. So it might be hard to see on the iPad, but do you see up here on the forehead, here on the cheekbone, and there on the nose? So that's where I'm gonna place the lightest colors. And then when I'm blending, I'm gonna blend out into the second lightest group, this larger group right here, okay? So all in this area. And then I have, it's pretty hard to see, but there's one kind of specular highlight right there on the nose. That's gonna be my very lightest value, okay? So that's my map. That's how I'm able to translate from the reference to the painting. And as I'm going through, I'm thinking about all of the shapes, how my brush would move over the cheekbone, if it was a real cheekbone, right? What if she had higher cheekbones? What if she had lower cheekbones? What if her cheeks were more sunken in? And I'm relating that all back to like my basic shapes, right? So the iPad gives me a map, and then once I'm actually in here, I can decide to alter or change however I want. So that's what we're gonna do. Now, I am going to be using a little bit of medium. You guys saw me pour that. I'm just using my Gamblin solvent-free fluid. I will dip my paintbrush into it just a little bit. I'm not going too heavy with the medium. And yeah, that's it. Let's get into it. All right, so you guys just saw me go through, put my Cremant's layer on everywhere the white or the light touched, basically. Now I'm gonna get into, I just wanna get some of these transitions and then I can fully get into my shadows, okay? I like to paint wet into wet as much as possible. So even if I know I only wanna be working on my shadows for the day, I'm still gonna get my transition pretty saturated so that I can blend wet into wet. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, so let's go back to the iPad real quick. So I placed my white and all my lightest highlights and then blended into the second group. All right, now my next step. I am going to look for my terminators. So the terminator is that line where your light turns into shadow, okay? So there's 4 big places where you typically see that. One is on the cheekbone, okay? So right here, see this line right there. That's my terminator on the cheekbone. We have it on the forehead as well, right here, okay? And often on, oh, right here, the nose, and then sometimes on the chin, okay? So do you guys see that? Where the light kind of sharply turns into shadow, all right? We think of this like a ball, you know, these very round shapes. And anytime you have light hitting that, you can spend a lot of attention on the terminator, and the payout is exponential, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah, you can have your lights pretty flat, okay? Like my lights are not as dimensional as they may appear, but that's because I spend a lot of attention on my terminators where the light transitions into shadow, and that helps give the sense of form. Okay, so why am I pointing this out? It's because all of those terminators, I'm gonna go in and add in a little warmth, all right? It's my personal preference. I typically find when I inspect my photos that at the line, at that terminator where the light turns into shadow, you typically see some warmth, okay? And it also helps avoid muddy colors when you're blending lights into darks, okay? You wanna increase the saturation in those areas in that transition so that you don't muddy the color. So that's what I'm gonna do right now, and then I'll be ready to get into my shadows. Okay. I'm gonna pause it real quick just to show you this color that I just mixed up. So this is Craplax Rose mixed with a little Cad Orange and Cremance White, okay? Now Cremance White, one of the reasons why I like it so much is it is semi-transparent, okay? And I have just a tiny bit of medium mixed into there. So I'm just gonna go in and kind of soak the transitions with this warm mix. I'm looking at my reference, seeing where all those terminators are. And adding warmth. So I'm not as warm in the forehead area. I'd add a little more yellow. And we'll do some on the chin. Darken it up. Uh-oh, one of my paints is trying to run away. Get that back up there. Just mixing up a darker, warm color for in that chin area. Doesn't need to be exact, but I think that works pretty well. Okay, so I've just kind of flooded my terminators with that warm color here. I've got my whites workable, and now I'm ready to go into these darker areas. Okay, and so I'm gonna go back to the reference again to show you. Okay, so now we're gonna look at where all my darks are. So I'm not going for this darker color, but rather this darker color. So I'm gonna place my colors there, and I'm ignoring, see this black? I'm ignoring that for now. I'm treating this all as one. So I'm just gonna go in and I'm gonna place my dark colors here and then blend out, okay? And we've got this really dark blue background going on. So my shadows are going to be, they're going to be affected by any reflected light going on in my environment. So they're going to take on some bluish tint. We already have some pretty cool browns going on in here. But when I mix it up, That's what I'm gonna do. All right, so let's mix up this darker color. Now, some of my reflected light, like in here, is too light. So I know I want to darken that overall. Okay. I'm gonna start. So I'm using this 50% gray palette. This helps me judge my color. So I know whatever I mix up, I want it to be on the gray kind of side, but darker than the palette color, all right? I'm gonna add a little Van Dyke brown. I do want some Cremance white in there. All right, a little burnt umber. And we'll do a little ultramarine blue. And let's see, still a little too warm for me. Okay, let's add a little bit of medium, just a tiny bit. Okay, I'm ready to flood this in. All right, that's not a bad color on my first go. Okay, and so again, I'm not really paying attention to detail. I am just going in and adding this anywhere where I see that darker color. So really around the bottom half of the face, under the nose and this lip, and this whole kind of mask area on the eyes. I'm just placing it in kind of rough, and then I'll blend it out after. Okay, so I have it roughed in, and now it's time to blend. Let me grab my towel. I always like to blend with a dry brush, or keep my brush as dry as possible. And then as I'm feathering this out and blending it out, I'm still following the direction of my colors in my palette. Okay, so I'm gonna get a smaller brush now and work in some of my darker values over this area, just really quick. And I'm doing that because that's where these real darks are. So I'm going into where the pretty much black areas are. And just going in with a mix of burnt umber and ultramarine blue. And again, I'm not being exact at all. I'm just kind of thinking large scale. Where's the light hitting? Where's the shadow? So everything is roughed in now, and you can see it's pretty rough looking. And now I'm gonna go in with, let's find her. Oh, here we go. A smaller filbert brush. I want to clean this off. I'll probably use this filbert and a round. And now I'm just gonna go in and start softening and adjusting. So you'll see that. All right, not bad so far for the next layer. Once we clean up the background and we start to work on some of the details like the lips, the nose, the eyes, I think we'll be in a good spot with it. But for now, I think that's good. I'm going to keep working into this, just keep doing the same thing, adjusting, pushing, pulling, and I'll put in time-lapse mode for a bit for you guys. And if you have any questions, let me know. Happy to answer. that's where I'm gonna leave it for today. Not bad for this next layer on the face. Take a look at the full thing. Now, one thing I did notice is when I went in with the darker shadows in this eye area, it does have her looking a little cross-eyed. So that's gonna be like number one on my list to fix, but overall, not too awful. All right, bye guys.